Welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show, where you'll learn how to grow your team today. Join Ken Trupke and his guests as they discuss what works and doesn't work to grow your team in today's world. And now, your host, Ken Trupke.
Hello, and welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show. Since Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth Revisited, became popular back in the mid-1990s, we've heard that it's important to work on your business, not just in your business. And working on your business includes systematizing things so you can deliver consistent value to your customers. My guest today, Adi Klevit, is the CEO and founder of the Business Success Consulting Group, and she's the host of the Systems Simplified podcast. She helps fast-growing companies achieve consistency and efficiency by documenting their processes and procedures. So here to share more about systematizing things and helping you work on your business, welcome Adi Klevit. Adi, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ken. Great to be here.
Oh, thanks. So let's get right to the Business Success Consulting Group. There's a lot of consulting groups out there. What makes you unique?
Well, we are very specialized. What we do is we create, we document, we optimize, and we implement processes and procedures for businesses. So that's what we do. That's what we specialize in, and that's what we do.
And typically, who would be a target customer or client for you?
So those would be companies that are between 5 and 100 million in revenue, in annual revenue. They have employees. It's companies that are already established. I would say they are fast-growing companies that are lacking consistency.
Yep, makes sense. All right, well, I want to find out a lot more about how you do that, but let's start first with your early career. How did you get to the place where you're the systems and systematizing person?
Yeah, so I'm an industrial engineer. That's my background. That's how I started my career. So it's always been processes and procedures and process improvement. And, throughout my career, I worked at different consulting companies, ran companies, and I had two of my own. So I definitely have that entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm also very good at organizing, identifying bottlenecks, identifying problems and places where we can improve. And I started this company in 2011 to help entrepreneurs be more consistent, achieve that freedom that they want by actually creating the systems that they need in order to do that.
Yeah, and so how does systematizing businesses and documenting processes, how does that help a business?
Well, systematizing and documenting by itself would not really help. You also have to implement. So I just want to say that, right? I know it's surprising. So you have to, first of all, document, and then you have to make sure that it is followed by everyone, that there is accountability. And I know that's your area of expertise, Ken, in terms of making sure that systems and also goals are followed and there is accountability. So the way that it helps is it achieves consistency. It reduces the risk is risk mitigation because mistakes are getting down to zero. It makes the business more valuable in terms of the selling price. It is definitely also allows the business owner to step out of the business. So the business is not dependent just on one person. It also it empowers others because the knowledge is not just in a person's head, but it's basically transparent. It can be shared. It allows to increase efficiency, profitability, etc., because now everyone knows what they're doing. It also allows you to train employees better, onboard them, and make sure there is employee retention. I know you are very big about creating culture. Well, it is a culture creating tool as well, because the culture is a culture of transparency, consistency, accountability, caring about your employees by teaching them and training them.
Oh, I love that. I love that connection to the culture. I think that's dead on, that having consistent processes where people know what to expect and know that they're going to be trained well, and there's a way to do things that you're asking them to do, because people are coming into a job maybe having some background in that, but they don't know how we do things here. And so to know that there's going to be a training program to help them do things the right way, the way we do them here, so important. I also just loved, I could hear that industrial engineer in you when you talk about reducing mistakes and reducing risk. So I've spent a lot of time in manufacturing, and I'm all on board for it, but just to hear that kind of language is interesting. So that all makes sense.
It totally is. And, I actually got it from clients, because when we finish a project, I always ask them, what did you get out of that project? And they said, mistakes are reduced to zero. There used to be so many mistakes on this process. Nothing. I sold my business for twice as much. I now have accountability. I don't have to work 70 hours a week anymore. I can step out of my business. I can go on vacation and nothing happens. Actually, the business continues to grow and do really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with all those benefits, all those things that you've seen and you've experienced and you've helped clients to get to that place, why are people reluctant to do the systematizing and the documenting and the implementing of those procedures?
I think it can be daunting. It's a daunting task. You have to have the know-how. You have to find the time. And honestly, that's why I started a business, which is a done it for you for processes and procedures, because I saw that exact point with my clients that I was consulting. I would tell them that they need processes, that they need to document it. I would send them with homework and actually instructions on how to document it, but nothing would happen. And then I asked, well, how about if I do it for you? Oh, really? I said, yes. Good, let's do it. And that's how it all started, because we all have our jobs. It's like you are the visionary and visions, set goals, work out on strategic plans and push the business forward. The COO or, whomever is in charge of operations, they have to deal with the day-to-day. There is the pressures of, where's the next customer? Where's the next sale? You have to find a time to actually sit down and do this.
Yeah, I can see where the do it for you would be really appealing. For people who don't have you do it for them, who would typically be involved in doing this? Is it that higher level COO, general manager type, or who literally is documenting these things?
Well, it depends, because it depends on the size of the organization and the hierarchy and who do you have. But you have to find somebody who will be the champion. You have somebody that will be the defender of, now we're going to document, and no matter what, it's going to happen. So you have to find somebody who will be your project manager in terms of that. There is no one answer. It really depends on the ability of the person to understand processes, to like processes, to be good at it. So that's the person I would choose.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be the person doing the work. It could be someone else, maybe shadowing them, that's documenting what's getting done.
Well, you'll have to have somebody who is basically in charge of the entire process, right? The entire project. So that will be one person who will be basically the project champion. Then what you will need to do is you will need to divide it and find others to participate. So they are going to be the one who will basically document. And yes, the way we work, for instance, we will interview the people actually doing the work and extract the information from them. So if you're doing it yourself, if that person that is doing the work is also good at process documentation, have them document it. If they are not, then have somebody else in the organization shadow them, record them, and then that person can write the processes.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. And I'm curious, do you use specific tools, and do you recommend tools, or is it just get out a legal pad and start writing, or how do you mechanically accomplish this?
So we do process mapping first. You have to design the project. You can't just do it however you want to do it, because, just start documenting, because you get random documentation that don't really lead to anywhere, right? You and I had a conversation on my podcast in terms of setting goals and how you lead leaders to actually set specific goals, but very very specific for that quarter, not all over the place, right? Because we can all have ideas in terms of, let's document everything. Well, where do you start? That's why we always do process mapping first. We plan and design. Then we decide where we're going to start. And the way that we decide where to start is we ask ourselves, or ask the clients, but if you're doing it yourself, ask yourself, what area of the company, if you had well-documented processes and procedures, will get you the biggest return on investment? And that is the area that you need to start. The way you start is you, again, break down that area into the key or core procedures that you need to document. And then you get with the subject matter experts, the people that are actually doing the work, the people that you would like to clone, the people that are experts in that area, and have them show you, have them explain how they do it. And ask a lot of questions. That's what we do. We are experts at asking questions and extracting information. So then we can create not only the procedures, but also best practices and the reason why behind it, so that knowledge is not lost.
Wow, excellent. So then when you get to the point that people are actually documenting procedures, is there a tool that you use to capture those things? And is that part of the process mapping software, or are those separate things? I'm curious how you actually go about doing this.
Yeah, so we do use process documentation platforms. We highly recommend that because that helps with the documentation, because we want to have one single source of truth, one single point of truth. We don't want documents to sit on a Google Drive somewhere, in SharePoint, on OneDrive, somewhere on somebody's desktop, maybe hard copies that somebody printed years ago. We want a single source of truth that anybody in the company will know that it exists and go there. So there are several very good process documentation platforms that we use and we recommend for our clients. And the reason why to use a process documentation platform is because it is accessible. People can have logins and they can log in and they can see everything there. They're highly searchable. You can actually create checklists, like onboarding checklists that we create, and quizzes, and make sure that there is more to just the documentation. You can document very easily without a lot of needing to edit the documents, right? And you can add screenshots, you can add videos. We are very big on adding videos to the procedures. We also, when you use a platform like that, there is the functionality of reminding you when the processes or procedures have to be revised or reviewed, so you can revise them or edit them as needed, so you keep them alive and you keep them up to date. So those are the tools that we use.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've definitely seen that random documentation thing where you've got some things in SharePoint and some things on the Google Drive and some things in a file drawer. And when somebody says, well, how do we do this? Like, hold on, let me find the documentation. And so to have it in a central place and have consistency there obviously makes a ton of sense. Well, I've got a couple more questions for you, and we'll do that on the other side of the break. Please stay with us on the Clarity Advisor Show. We're talking with Adi Klevit.
Is your business where you want it to be, or on track to get there? Clarity Advisors helps business leaders improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success. We specialize in helping you streamline your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Call or text Ken at 616-822-2998 to have a complimentary 12-minute call to see what some clarity could do for you.
Okay, welcome back to the Clarity Advisor Show. Today we're talking to process systematizing and documenting expert, Adi Klevit. Adi, we've talked about a lot about the details of how to do this. About how long does it take I know it's going to depend on how much we're trying to tackle, and is it a department or a whole company, and how big's the company. But when you say we're going to do this piece of the business, maybe we're going to document the accounting, the collections procedure, is that days worth of work? Is it weeks? Is it months? What do you typically find, and how do you set expectations?
Sure. It depends on how long do you have to invest, right, in terms of time. What I find that the way that we build our documentation project is I find that dedicating a couple of hours a week is something that most business owners and their employees can dedicate to this project. I think it's unrealistic to expect somebody to shut off their operations and do it for 3 days. So I tell my clients, give me 3 hours a week. And every week doesn't have to be the same people, because again, we use the people from the different departments. So let's say we're doing the accounting departments. We're going to talk to the person in charge of accounts payable. We're going to talk to the person in charge of accounts receivable. We're going to talk to the person in charge of bookkeeping. So it alternates, but that's about what we take. Our advantage is that we are expert at it. We've done many, many companies, so we have a very large knowledge in different industries. So we know how to extract information. So we don't let people just ramble on and on and on. We ask the questions as we record it, so we're already thinking about how we're going to document the processes. With that cadence, I would say it takes about 2 to 3 months per department.
Okay. Yeah. And that's what I was looking for, is just the kind of that order of magnitude of how long this should take. I really love the idea of the limited time per week, because we've got a business to run. And I know that's what I've run into when working with business leaders about how to get things documented and standardized is, hey, we don't have time for that. I'm like, well, you've got time to make a big mess of things and do things over and again and do things twice because it was wrong the first time, but we don't have time to put a system in place. There's benefits to this, but there's an investment before you can get that return. So well, we touched on just a little bit of that accountability part. I'm really curious. We've got it all documented now, but it only matters if people actually follow that. We can only have consistent results and consistent training and all the things we're looking for to deliver value to our customers if we follow those procedures. So how do you work with clients to get them to actually do this once it's been documented?
We have a whole rollout process that we do, because again, just documenting for the sake of documentation, not worth it. I love success stories from our clients when they tell me that they use it 9 months later, a year later, 4 years later, 5 years later. And I follow up with my clients after they're finished with the project and say, hey, how are you using it? And I love those responses. We're using it all the time. Now we hired somebody new and they went through the process and they're just loving it. I love to hear when somebody tells me that they decreased their onboarding time by 75% because they have the documentation. So how do we do that? I developed an 8-step process of rolling it out. It starts with, I'm not going to go over everything, but just the key points. It's the mindset. It starts from the top. It starts from a buy-in from the visionary. It starts from a buy-in from the CEO. It starts with deciding that this is the culture we're going to embrace, that we are going to actually use that documentation, and there is accountability. That's one of the steps. We have to make sure the processes are accessible. I spoke about one source of truth. If somebody comes to you and asks you questions, you first of all say, hey, have you looked at our platform? What does it say? Not be mean about it. It's not like you're not going to talk to people. Absolutely. But save those conversations to constructive things, to improve things, not necessarily answer questions that already been answered. It consists of regular reviews of those processes. It consists of a checklist that I provide on how to use those processes in day-to-day management. So there are different steps that once we are done with the documentation and the optimization, that we work with a group, not just with 1 or 2 people, but with the entire organization, so they all know it. One of the key steps is to make sure that everyone in your company actually read those processes and procedures. Because if they didn't, how are you going to get everybody on the same page? So those are some examples.
Yeah, I would think that 75% reduction in onboarding time is going to be a pretty powerful motivator for a business leader. When you can get those kind of tangible results that are really going to move you forward, that's a huge incentive to get stuff like this in place. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Working on your business is so important, but we struggle sometimes to know exactly how to do that. So I just appreciate you walking us through the steps and the pieces of all that. All that said, you've also got your own podcast, the Systems Simplified podcast. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I started the podcast. I mean, we've been going on now for about 3 years. I love podcasting, just like you can. I get great guests on my podcast, and you were one of them. We had a great conversation. And the reason why I love podcasting so much is because I learn so much. I get to connect with amazing entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and we share experiences. I'm very curious, love to ask questions. You know, you are a great interviewer and you do the same. You're asking me all these amazing questions, and it just gets the data out there to share with our listeners. And I get great feedback of people that listen to my podcast and say, wow, I didn't know that, and I learned that, and I learned that, and I learned that. And it's all learning from each other, which I really find very valuable. So yeah, it's called the Systems Simplified podcast. You can find it on any Spotify, on anywhere where you listen to a podcast. And I try to bring a variety of people, a variety of opinions, variety of industries, and it's great.
Yeah, and we'll get a link to that in the show notes. So I'm also curious, you're such a learner and you absorb information so well. And just what you said about your podcast and how much you can learn from having guests on. I'm curious, what are you reading or podcasts that you listen to regularly?
Yeah, so right now I'm reading several books about how to write a book because I'm going to write my own book. So I'm doing the research, and it's fascinating. You know, it is definitely, I love to hear people, what they say about it and what did they find successful. So I had, it's 2 books by 2 of my guests on the podcast and other books. So I love that. So this is kind of like, I'm in the midst of it right now. I mean, I guess if I'm going to publish the book and then somebody's going to listen to this podcast and say, oh, that's where she started. I love also listening to others' podcasts. I mean, I love your podcast. I love Jeremy Wise's podcast, The Inspired Insider, which is a great podcast. I listen to business podcasts. I listen to Build to Sell. You know, I love those. I love to hear inspiring stories of entrepreneurs that have made it. That keeps me going, you know, listening to their struggles, listening to the ups and downs, but listening to their tenacity, their courage, their pushing forward. It's very inspirational for me.
Yeah, I mean, life is definitely not up and to the right for any of us, right? There's always challenges, there's always things to overcome, but it's perseverance that is the common thread of success, that people that just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and eventually break through and get where they want to go. So I agree. I love stories of reading biographies or listening to things about stories of people that have been successful and hearing the challenges that they overcame and knowing that is the common thread, that it's the perseverance that matters. And then you can be inspired by the successes that they've had. So such good stuff. And we'll get links to those in the show notes as well. So Adi, this has been so fun. How can people, who should reach out to you, and then how should they do that?
You know, anyone that has any question, I love talking to people. Just reach out. And my phone number is 503-662-2911. You can call, you can text, you can find me on LinkedIn. So it's Adi Klevit on LinkedIn. I don't think there are other Adi Klevit, so it's very easy to find. And of course, you can also visit our website, which is bizsuccesscg.com.
Excellent. And to make it even easier for people to find you, we'll have all those links in the show notes. So, Adi, I do so appreciate your time. This has been so interesting and informative and valuable. I appreciate you being here and sharing this with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of another Clarity Advisor show. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Clarity Advisor Show. Clarity Advisors is a speaking, training, and consulting firm specializing in helping you simplify your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Connect with Clarity Advisors today to learn more about how they can help you improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success.